All right. I think we can get started. We've got some people online. Good evening and welcome to the University of Manitoba's Tuesdays with TD webinar series, Financial Planning for Your Children's Future. I'm Amy Brake. I'm a proud alumni and Senior Alumni Relations Officer for the University of Manitoba. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you for joining us and making this part of your day. Before I introduce today's presenter, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping details with you. If you've participated in any of our virtual programming before, you know that we like to record them whenever we can and upload them to our website. Our presenter today has been kind and generous enough to allow us to do just that. Even though you are watching live now, you will be able to refer to the recording as many times as you like, or even share it with your friends and colleagues who may be interested in this topic. We've allocated an hour for the webinar today, including time for questions and answers near the end. Should you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll do our best to address them during the Q&A portion of the presentation. We are also interested in knowing if there is any interest for in-person presentations on campus. If yes, let us know in the chat. I am delighted to introduce your presenter this evening, Chantal Massacotte, a branch manager with the TD Canada Trust at the Tyndall Market location here in Winnipeg. She's been with TD for 2 years, however, has 20 years of experience in the financial industry, supporting and advising customers to navigate their financial goals. Chantal is a University of Manitoba alum, graduating in 2004. She's passionate about people and ensuring that everyone gets an opportunity to achieve their goals and focuses on this with her employees as well as with customers. She is the mother of a 4-year-old little boy, and together with her husband, they spend their free time going for walks to the park, at the hockey rink, or with family and friends. In this session, Chantal will provide steps on how to prepare financially for our children's futures. Welcome, Chantal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. I'm just going to get my presentation up here. But first of all, I'd like to take a moment and welcome you all. Thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. I bring today quite a bit of information, and I'm looking forward to going through it with you and being available to answer your questions. As Amy said, my name is Chantal. I'm a branch manager here at TD at the Tyndall Market branch. The topic for tonight is financial planning for a children's future. And now more than ever, this is such an important topic. I hope to be able to provide you with insights and guidance, and I will be around after the formal presentation to answer some questions as well. Now, just as a quick note, this presentation is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not intended as financial, tax, legal, accounting, or other professional advice to you, and should not be relied upon in that regard. As always, for your specific situations, please consult with appropriate professional advisors to discuss your goals. Now, everyone wants a better future for their children, and this is the reason we're here today. Having a solid financial plan that starts early really is the key to building wealth and financial security for your children. On our agenda today, we're going to be talking a little bit about budgeting. We're going to start with the big picture, some pre-arrival. So for those of you who are planning for your children's arrival, the early years, and of course the later years. We'll also talk about investing, general overview, as well as some of the investments that can help you build for your children's future, like RESPs, TFSAs, real estate, and of course RDSPs. We'll then move into estate planning. We'll talk about wills, trusts, living wills, and power of attorneys. CTV News in 2022 estimated that raising a child from birth to age 18 costs approximately $281,000. That's $15,500 approximately per year, or just over $1,300 per month. That seems significant. Now, some factors affect how much you'll spend, such as your location and lifestyle. And of course, don't forget, childcare requires more money in the early years. On the slide here, I've provided a chart that provides you with an average annual cost of raising a child based on the various categories. Now, budgeting is the most crucial step in creating a financial plan. Making a monthly budget for when the baby arrives is important. Plan for a reduced income, additional expenses such as diapers, food, clothes. You want to use free tools such as the TD MySpend app, the budget-friendly application that allows you to make your plan visible, allows you to check in on a regular basis, gives you the opportunity to track your spending and your savings. And as a TD customer, your personal bank account as well as your credit card transactions are automatically available in the MySpend app to help you keep track of that spending. You can categorize your expenses from your TD deposit and credit card accounts, such as needs, wants, or other. You can gain insights using the MySpend to track your expenses and get some idea of where you can make changes. You can also get transaction alerts every time money is spent. You can use the wish list feature, which is really helpful when you're planning for a new baby, to set ideas in terms of what you need to save for and to track your progress towards spending. The MySpend app is a free download. However, standard message and text message rates might apply. When you're considering costs when it comes to pre-arrival, you might need to consider your apartment or your house. Perhaps you need a bigger location or home to raise that little one in, which of course could increase your housing costs. You might also need a bigger vehicle, more space for a car seat, or storage for those things like strollers, which of course increases your monthly transportation costs. You may want to consider things like a secondhand car in order to save money. Purchasing all the baby equipment and furniture needed can also be very overwhelming. Perhaps look for secondhand items before buying them. Check on places like Marketplace or Kijiji, of course, when there's not a safety issue at play. Pre-arrival, there's some other points to consider. In Canada, maternity leave covers you for up to 15 weeks. After that, you can take a standard parental leave for an additional 40 weeks or 69 weeks if you decide to take the extended parental leave. Employment insurance is provided during the maternity/parental leave, but it replaces your income only up to 55% of your weekly earnings, up to a maximum of $650 per week. Some employers will offer additional top-ups, giving you a nice boost for your income for a while. For example, your employer perhaps might top you up to 80% of your income for an extended time frame. Sometimes it's 4 months. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it's the entirety of your leave. Once your little one arrives, you may need to consider things like daycare. Here in Manitoba, it's important to get yourself on that list even before the baby's arrival. When your child is born, ensure they get in. You're only on leave for so long, and then when you go back to work, where's your baby gonna stay? You should always look into whether you qualify, of course, for childcare support. If available, you should be reviewing your work benefits, adding on that child as a beneficiary, but also as a dependent if you have any type of benefits. You should also sign up for the child care benefit, which is tax-free monthly payments that will be made to the family up to the age of 18. Once the child is in their early years, young children can be more expensive because of those childcare costs that we previously discussed. The national average of cost for childcare is $10,000 per year per child. This cost widely varies depending on where you live. Toronto, of course, is one of the most expensive cities, with the median cost of infant care at $1,685 a month or $20,000 a year, which is 10 times the cost of childcare in Montreal. The child care benefit is a tax-free monthly payment made to eligible families to help with the cost of raising children under the age of 18. Preschool is optional and can be considered for children as a child care option before public school begins. Once your child starts public school or kindergarten, daycare costs are significantly reduced. Most provinces, of course, except Manitoba and Saskatchewan, offer full-day kindergarten. The broad range of before and after school programs is about $30 to $40 per day. These programs can be used as extended care once your child is in school. Check with your local school board to understand the costs in your area. Before and after school programs are typically flexible in offering care options such as a couple of days a week or just morning and afternoon care. Hundreds of dollars can be spent monthly on various extracurricular activities, including sports, music, arts, language. Weekend trips for sports tournaments or dance competitions quickly add up with money spent on hotel, gas, food, other expenses. If parents are both working, summer camp might potentially provide childcare in the summer months and possibly over Christmas and March break. You can always save money and time in camp if you use your vacation time during these breaks as well. All important points to consider. Once your child gets a little older and they've hit those teenage years, some reports say that the older the child gets, additional expenses could rise. Consider new expenses at this age, things like a cell phone, monthly plan, and no matter what your opinions are, we live in an age of technology where computers and iPads are all a part of our everyday life. Gaming systems, driving lessons. Some of those kids, they eat more as they get older. And of course, even more expensive extracurricular activities as they excel in those areas. Children at this age can start to get part-time jobs, which helps to pay for their costs. You might consider things like delivering weekly flyers or pet walking, even babysitting. Braces and other healthcare costs not covered by a provider can add unexpected costs. Always prepare for unexpected by maintaining a family emergency fund. You don't have to spend approximately $250,000 to raise kids. Ensure you're looking for cheaper alternatives and inexpensive ways to fill their needs. Now, when it comes to investing, the most common savings tool for your child and to start for them is the RESP, which is the Registered Education Savings Plan. An RESP is a tax-advantaged savings vehicle designed to fund the expenses of post-secondary education, like a trade school, a college, or university. Any investment gains are not subject to income tax until they are withdrawn. You may want to start a savings or investment account for other long-term expenses like a child's wedding, a down payment to buy your first home. Remember to prioritize your retirement savings plan before saving for your kids, as they have their whole life to save as well. A sandwich generation is a group of adults who care for both their aging parents and their children at the same time. Consider this as you might find yourself in that situation. Now, when it comes to RESPs, the government does provide some additional assistance. They provide a Canada Education Savings Grant, which is 20% of contributions, which is a matching of 20% of contributions up to $2,500 per year per child, resulting in up to $500 in grants annually. Now, the lifetime Canada Education Savings Grant is $7,200 if you've contributed the maximum amount. Now, the maximum contribution total towards those is $50,000 per beneficiary. Suppose you're unable to contribute in some years. In that case, you can catch up on contributions in future years, receiving up to an additional $500 in grants per year until you catch up on those previous gap years. However, there are no tax deductions. It's not like an RSP. When the subscriber makes an RESP contribution, not only parents, but grandparents, other family members, or friends can also open RESPs for children. Low-income contributors may also be eligible for additional government benefits. What those are called is the Canada Learning Bond. There's also other provincial incentives. Unfortunately, Manitoba does not have one. When future withdrawals are used for education assistance payments, the original contributions are withdrawn tax-free. The government grants and any investment growth are taxable. However, they're taxable to the beneficiary, which is the student, who is usually at a lower tax rate because they are not earning as much income or any at all because they're in school. If the child does not continue with qualifying post-secondary education, different tax rules could apply. So as I mentioned, the basic Canada Education Savings Grant is 20% of the annual contribution up to a maximum of $500 per year. The government of Canada provides up to $2,000 to an RESP for an eligible child for the Canada Learning Bond that I spoke about. When it comes to those additional provincial incentives, British Columbia has a training and education savings grant, which the BC government will contribute $1,200 to eligible children aged 6 to 8. And then Quebec has a basic Quebec education savings incentive, the tax measure that encourages Quebec families to start saving for a child's education. The measure consists of a refundable tax credit that is paid directly into the RESP. You can gift money to a child. We're going to speak about our TFSAs now at this point. You can gift money to a child or grandchild over 18 years of age for them to make contributions to a tax-free savings account. A TFSA contribution room begins when they turn 18, and they would accumulate 1 full year worth of contribution space immediately for that year. TFSA contributions can be very flexible for a young adult. The government sets limits each year that allows them to also carry forward if they don't use it immediately at the age of 18. You can make TFSA withdrawals anytime, keeping in mind restrictions which may be applicable to specific types of investments, of course, or from the cash portion if you use it for any purpose, including education, you can use it for any purpose, including education, a home down payment, or even RSP contributions. Now, an important piece of information, though, is that it's important to note that a TFSA belongs to the account holder. So if money is gifted to your child and they're putting it in a TFSA, that TFSA belongs to them. Nobody else would be able to withdraw. It would be theirs to withdraw. Another area of investing that you can look at is real estate investing. Real estate prices have risen so much in Canada that financial assistance with a first home is becoming more and more of a reality. And it's well noted out there that our younger generations are finding it challenging to save for down payments or to purchase homes. Some options here would be co-signing. This involves adding a parent's credit history and income to the application. The co-signer is equally responsible for the debt if the mortgage goes into default. You can gift real estate. When gifting money or money towards real estate, when gifting money to a child for down payment and the child is in a relationship, that gift, of course, may eventually become subject to the division in the event of a separation. So it would be important to consult a lawyer for professional advice if you're choosing to do something like this. And of course, purchasing. Parents might consider buying real estate for their child before they're old enough to move into it on their own. This can be done using a family trust or by purchasing rental properties. RDSPs, or Registered Disability Savings Plans, are also a savings option for parents with children who qualify for the disability tax credit. Adults with disabilities can also be eligible up until the beneficiary turns 59 years old. Now, these type of savings plans are not necessarily meant for education costs, but instead as long-term savings for those people with disabilities. We'll move on to estate planning next. Writing a will is essential for young parents to name executors and guardians for kids. It's also important to ensure your beneficiary designations are up to date. You can designate beneficiaries not only on life insurance and in wills, but also on registered plans. Your assets are distributed according to your wishes. You want to also ensure that you include children from any other marriages in your estate. A trust is another way to pass on your estate using a fiduciary relationship. You give another person the authority to handle your assets to benefit a third party, which would be your beneficiaries. This would be something that you might consider if your children are under the age of 18, or if there is somebody with a disability that you would potentially need a trust to be able to help manage those funds after your passing. A trust can be created for various reasons, and there are different kinds of trust accounts. They are commonly used to control distribution of assets to beneficiaries, and another critical step is to name beneficiaries for all of your registered accounts, as I previously mentioned. Every adult should have a living will or an advance directive and powers of attorney for personal care and property. In your living will, you will set out your wishes for end-of-life care. In a power of attorney for personal care, you give a trusted person the authority to carry out the wishes in your living will and make all the decisions related to healthcare, housing, and personal affairs in the event that you are unable to. In a power of attorney for property, you give a trusted person authority over your assets. It is a good idea to complete these documents even if you're young and healthy, as illness or injury can happen at any time. It's also really important that you keep a copy of your will at home and the original in your safe deposit box at TD. This goes for both your will and your power of attorneys. And it's important that your executor and your power of attorney know where these can be located in the event that they need to put them in place. So that concludes the formal presentation. I will just once again reiterate that this presentation is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not intended as financial tax, legal, accounting, or other professional advice to you specifically, and should not be relied upon in that regard. I really want to encourage you to book an appointment with your TD Bank personal banker to discuss your specific situation to find out if any of the areas discussed in today's presentation would be beneficial for you and your family. You can book an appointment on TD Online or through the mobile app, or by calling your local TD branch or accessing Easy Line through your TD mobile app. With that being said, I am happy to take any questions.
All right. So we do have some questions, Chantel. The first being from Al Rahman. Hello, is the child benefit just for children residing in Canada?
Yes. Yes, it is. The child tax benefit, yes, it is.
Okay. RESPs, when is a good time to start thinking about opening an RSP for your child?
Yeah, honestly, as early as you can, for various reasons. Now, first of all, you can open an RESP as soon as you have a birth certificate and a SIN number for that child, which both would usually be registered and received within a few months of that child's birth. The really important reason is because you want to get started on getting some of those learning bond and those grants as early as possible, and then investing the money. So you can either invest it in a cash portion, just a regular savings, or you can invest it in a GIC or a term deposit, or of course in mutual funds. And the longer the time frame you have, the more opportunity you have to earn some of those additional growth on the money that you have invested and the money that the government has provided to you, so that you increase the value by the time the child goes to school.
Okay, so then is there interest that you receive on an RESP then?
Yeah, good question. So it really depends on how you're invested, like I said, within that RESP. So you have all of those different options that I just described to you. Interest is earned on things like GICs. You can also earn if you're investing in a mutual fund, you could earn dividends and or capital gains, depending on exactly how you're invested. There's lots of different options. And again, that would be based on you specifically and what your specific investment portfolio looks like.
Okay, and the dollar value that is in an RESP is sometimes subject to market value. So if the market's doing really well, then there may be a climb in that RESP, and then other times you may actually, could you possibly lose money?
So it's not really a loss. You always want to make sure that when you have a downturn in your investments, especially if you have a mutual fund, for example, that you're kind of just going to ride out that loss. You're going to end up probably making that back. And that's why a longer time horizon is always a really good thing, which is why starting early is the most important key part. If you only have a short time horizon, we would probably look at what your specific goals are, what your risk aversion is, and possibly not even go into a mutual fund if there is a concern about a loss.
Okay. So then Hemok Park asks, is an RCMP or RCMP, is an RESP for Canadian citizens and permanent residents only?
Yes, it is. Yeah, you do need that SIN number in order to have the child registered.
Okay. So moving a little bit away off of RESP questions, you mentioned co-signing on a property. If I co-sign for my child, will that help them get approved for a mortgage?
It may. Whenever you're a co-signer, you bring with you into that application all of your assets and your liabilities, as well as your income and your expenses. So, if you have, 2 or 3 different mortgages because you have rental properties, it really depends on whether or not you would be able to could afford to impact that application in a positive way. Now, let's say you can, absolutely. It can absolutely help. But the only thing that it would be really important for you to note as that co-signer is that you would also be a co-owner on that home. So your name would be on title, but in addition to that, you would be equally responsible for that debt. So if something were to happen to your child, maybe they weren't able to work for some reason, illness or an injury or a loss of job, that mortgage would still need to be paid. And because you would be a co-signer on there, you would be a joint applicant and just as responsible for that debt.
Okay. Can the parent be removed from that mortgage at any time?
Absolutely. You can look to do that as part of an application process when the child is fully able to take on the responsibilities of that debt on their own. So, you usually see those kinds of things after a few years, paying off student loans, all those kinds of things, where the child is now an adult and making more money, better income. And at that point, we can look to do a different application with perhaps even a spouse at that time, which brings an additional income to the application, and then remove the parents.
Okay. So along sort of the same lines then, if a parent, how's the best way to ask this question? Will a parent pay capital gains if they purchase a second property that is meant for use of their child?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
Um, uh, would it be a benefit in any way for that child to pay rent, or is it strictly just a second home that the parent owns?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be necessarily that they own it on their own, right? They would own it with the child. Sorry. So the only time that you ever have to consider capital gains is when you sell a second income property. So because this is not an income property, because that child is likely not paying rent, instead they're actually making the mortgage payments on their own, it wouldn't be considered an income property, and thus also not a property that is solely owned by the parents. Now, if the parents decided to purchase a home for their child to live in, charge them rent, perhaps they couldn't qualify at the time or whatever the case may be, so they decided to take them off the application all on their own. And then they decided to sell that home, then yes, they would pay capital gains, or they would be subject to capital gains. If they instead decided to not sell that home, but that child, after finding a job, let's say, decided to assume the property, then no, because you can gift it. And that's when you don't have to worry about, because there's no sale, no growth or selling it for an increased part value as opposed to what they would have purchased it for. That's where a capital gain comes from, right? So if it's gifting, you wouldn't have to worry about that.
So what's the process for gifting then?
Yeah, so honestly, it's very similar to a sale, except you're gifting the equity in the home as part of the down payment. It would still have to have an offer to purchase in place, which you would contact a lawyer for. And then it's just called an assumption that we would do, an application to qualify the child to purchase that home from the parent. And then lawyers would be involved to help transition the title.
Okay. A follow-up question to the Canadian Citizen RSP question is, are there any financial programs or investments for non-Canadian citizens or permanent residents for individuals that are here?
Unfortunately not, no.
So changing gears a little bit, there's a question about mat leave. Would the 15 weeks be full salary of what the individual is making, or is it only the 55% that you had mentioned in your presentation?
Yeah, that's correct. It's only 55%. Most companies will top you up at minimum for those 15 weeks, but I can only say most. I can't guarantee that all companies would.
Okay. And then another one, how much is the child care benefit? Like, how much is it actually?
Like the child tax benefit?
Yeah.
That's dependent, and that is completely calculated based on your income or your household income, but also how many children you have and the age of the children.
Oh, okay, so it's a percentage based on your
It is.
income?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you know what the percentage is that they base it on?
I don't, because it's different for ages of children, and it's also different for how many children you have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
and and just so you also know, it is reassessed annually when you do your taxes.
Oh, okay. Um, is the Canadian Education Savings Grant automatic, or is that something you have to apply for?
Yeah, so when you open your RESP with any financial institution, but we would encourage you, of course, to visit your TD to do so. We would fill out the application with you and put that through and send it off to the government along with the application for the Canada Learning Bond at the time of opening the RESP.
Okay, and if for some reason that didn't occur at the time of opening an RESP, could you go back to your financial institution and ask them to apply for that?
Absolutely, yeah. But it is part of, for the most part, everybody's process, because that's the whole point of the RESP, is to ensure that we are getting and maximizing the contributions from the government as well. Now, I will say though, and this is important to note, if you have decided to open an RESP for your child, and then let's say your parents, as their grandparents, have also opened an RESP for your child, the government grants are only applicable to one person or one RESP. So for the most part, that would be the primary caregiver that would get those. But in some cases, if the primary caregiver does not have the money to be able to contribute to that on a regular basis, and the grandparents have decided to take that on, they can sign over that grant and the bond to the grandparents' account so that they can still be accessed.
Okay.
So you can only get one grant and one bond, but you can have multiple RESPs.
Oh, okay. So, you can continue putting money into your RSP, however you choose to do so. Um, how does that work with the Canada Learning Bond and the what is it?
This is
CESG.
CESG.
So
Yeah,
is that automatic or is that
automatic. Yeah,
okay? And
yeah,
is
yeah. So it's assessed, the CESG is assessed, I believe it's twice a year, and the proceeds will just go straight into that RESP that you've opened and that you've applied for the grant through. And the Canada Learning Bond is you get it at the beginning when you first open the account. And then if you are considered part of that low income threshold, you can continue to get it on an annual basis.
Oh, okay, gotcha. We have a question here. Just somebody logged in late and they missed the beginning part of the presentation. So Maxine, yes, we will be rebroadcasting this. We'll be providing you with a recording, and it'll be uploaded on our website as well, so you can view it again at a later date. Let's see, what else do we have? What's the best way to set up a will? So is it best to go through a lawyer, or can you use one of those online will platforms?
Yeah, we're always going to tell you to go through a lawyer. Most financial institutions will specifically request a legal power of attorney, a legal will and a legal power of attorney. So that would always be our recommendation. I myself have never used one of those online ones. And for the most part, we do see the legal ones in our branches.
Okay. Um, what should be included in a will, particularly when it pertains to the children?
That is a question best answered, to be honest with you, by a lawyer.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. Everybody has their own wishes and their own specific desires in terms of how they want their children cared for and what they want left to their children, depending, of course, on different ages of the children. And all of those things will be reviewed with you when you sit down with a lawyer to create a will. And that's why it's so important to really go with a lawyer, because they have done so many and they've drafted so many that they've sort of seen all the different scenarios to account for, to bring up if it's something you maybe haven't even thought of.
Okay. What's the difference between an executor and a power of attorney?
Yeah, so an executor is the person that will be appointed to proceed through all of the necessary steps of your estate once you've passed away. And a power of attorney is somebody that you would have in place prior to your passing to help you manage things. I think the presentation talked a little bit about a power of attorney for your personal care, but then also a power of attorney for your personal property. Your personal care, of course, would be just that, making sure that it's like a healthcare directive where they're giving instruction on with your doctors and your caregivers, versus a power of attorney for your personal assets would be what you would use with us at the bank. And that would be somebody that could help you manage your affairs once you get too old to maybe go into a bank when it's this cold out, or even when you're younger, if you're somebody who's decided to go traveling abroad, or you're taking a contract in another country, you may want to appoint one of your parents or somebody that's close to you as a power of attorney to help you manage your affairs in Canada while you're not here to access them.
Okay. All right. Okay. That looks like we might be at the end of our questions. If you have any other questions, quickly put them in the chat right now. We still have a few minutes left. Just wait and I'll look at the chat for a little bit. See if anything pops through. I hope everyone has enjoyed their evening listening this evening. It looks like we have a note, Chantel. Karen actually sends a message saying that this is a very good for basic overview. Thank you. And she will definitely be watching it again. So that's great. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, wonderful. I'm happy that you were able to take something away.
Yeah. And a thank you from HEMOC as well. We did answer some of their questions. Okay, it looks like that might be the end of our questions. So thank you very much for delivering such an informative and thought-provoking presentation, Chantel. And thank you to everyone who joined us today and for asking some really great questions and keeping the conversation going. We do have some upcoming webinars that you can still continue to participate in through the Tuesdays with TD series. The next one will be on February 20th, where we will continue the conversation about estate planning. So, log on and register for that one if you haven't already done so. And in the next few days, we will send you a copy of the recorded webinar and post it on our website. So please feel free to share that with your friends, family, and colleagues. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope to see you all back in February. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.